Well, hello everybody. It's Danny back from Deepsouth Homestead on Porch Time today. And guys, today I'm sitting in my sitting room over at Pecan Grove. I was going to sit outside to do this, and I know a lot of y'all probably won't know what I'm talking about, but in the Deep South, we have an insect. I call it an insect. So I don't really know what it is. It's called a love bug. Those things are the most annoying thing that God has ever allowed to be created upon the face of the earth, I believe. They're here by the hundreds of thousands. And if you try to sit outside, they're all over you, they're all over the camera. I mean, it's like being, those of you way up north know what I'm talking about the black flies, when there's a season for them up there. That you have to wear the netting over you to keep them from eating you up. If the love bugs if they bit, you could not go outside. I mean, you would have to be in a armored suit to go outside. And I was going to go shoot Porch Time, and those things were so bad. I mean, they get all in your face, they get all in your mouth. I mean, if you drive down the highway, those of you from the south know what I'm talking about. If you drive down the highway, they ruin your cars and your trucks and stuff like that. They get all over the windshield. They get on your paint job, and if you don't clean them off pretty quick, the acids in their body will actually destroy the paint on your vehicles. I mean, these things, they come in with the hurricanes when they come. And I just was going to go shoot Porch Time and found out, I got out, I was like, I can't do this because it would be too distracting. For them, they would be all over everything, and you would see them crawling all over the lens of the camera. They'd be all over me, and so I just decided to come inside in my sitting room in here at Pecan Grove, and in my nice camouflage recliner that used to be in the cabin over at Deep South. But you know, the weather's not extremely hot outside. I mean, it's only 85 degrees. We had a nice little shower last night, right ahead of the live stream we did. I'm shooting this on a Sunday now, because Saturday night we did the live stream. It come a good little downpour right ahead of the live stream. And it always, I mean, it never fails. It's going to be cloudy and mess up with the internet. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. We've come to that conclusion. We've done this for so many years now. It seems like every Saturday night there's always going to be something happening. And you know, ever since we, I mean, this may sound crazy, but ever since we purchased Pecan Grove and started trying to build our life over here, it has angered the devil. And he has tried to fight us in everything that he possibly can. And we have just made it up our mind, we are not going to let the devil win at this. So we keep pressing on, trying to get things done. Because it brings me to the topic today, and guys, on our live streams on Saturday night, lots of times I touch on topics that I'm going to use on Porch Time. And at the end of the live stream, I talked about a simpler life. And if y'all remember back, I told you that the reason for Pecan Grove for us was we were looking for a simpler life. We needed more land so that we could have our privacy. Where we were at, we were losing our privacy. We try to shoot videos, and the neighbors make so much noise that it was almost impossible for us to get out and film a video. So we were wanting to have a place where it could be quieter, more private, and not to say that there's not noises here at Pecan Grove, because where I'm shooting this video at, because there is noises. You have neighbors here who, in the distance, they have a four-wheeler that they rumble around on that thing all the time, and way in a long distance from here, you'll hear some barking dogs that some neighbor way down the road has. I don't know. Totally annoying. But you know, you do have things that, you know, every place has its stuff. But here, our journey at our age was to become more simple in what we do. Because technology is just, in my opinion, technology is ruining most everything that we have to be able to just sit out on the porch. Like sitting on the porch. Remember when we were younger, you could sit on the porch, you didn't hardly ever hear anything. You could hear the wildlife, the birds, and just be quiet and just sit out and just enjoy the afternoon. That's almost impossible to do now. Everybody works all week long, and when the weekend comes, all they got on their mind is playing. And, you know, we're not that way. Every day to us is the same. To us, there is no weekend. I mean, we don't look at one day as being any different than another day. The only thing different about the weekends is that most of the stores in town's closed on Saturday afternoon and Sunday. That's the only difference. And we can't. And now some of the big box stores are starting to come into our town, like Tractor Supply and things like that. I mean, they are open on Sunday. If a person needed to go to one of them to get something like that, they could go to pick up something if that store carried it. But you know, all your Walmarts are open. Everything's open. But the chaos, Wanda and I have noticed, everything is just utter chaos right now. It doesn't matter if you go to town. I mean, it's just traffic. It just looks like an ant bed. When we were coming up, our towns were not like that. We talked about here a while back, Wanda and I did, about all the difference in the buildings and stuff like that. How that, you know, the old downtown parts of the building was the main hub. I mean, you had a J.C. Penney's, you had a Sears and Roebuck, you had Western Auto, you know, all your family-owned clothing stores was there. Most of your little grocery stores were in town, and they bought local produce from the local people around. And there were no what I call big box stores. You know, I mean, we had a Sunflower. Some towns had a Sunflower. Some of them had a Piggly Wiggly. Some had a Greer's. You know, stuff like that. That was the extent. But when the big box stores started coming in, like Walmart and stuff like this, lots of your mom and pop businesses just went out of business. I mean, I remember as a child, we could take up here. There's a railroad track that goes through Wiggins, a town that's, you know, not far from me, but it's not close either. But there's a railroad track that went right through the middle of town, which that was quite common in most towns, had a railroad track through them. Well, in that railroad track, there was a feed mill right there on the railroad track. And people could go there, and you could harvest all your dry corn. You could take it to the feed mill and go there, and they would process it in any way that you wanted it processed. If you wanted it beat up into a hammer milled, up into cattle feed, pig feed, the trains come in and brought other things that you could add to it, like wheat or, you know, soy or anything like that. I mean, these trains would unload all this stuff at these feed mills and these big giant bins there, and you could have that stuff mixed in with your feed and create your own cattle feed, and you could raise part of it. We had old implements, an implement store here in our town. You could go there and you could get just about any part for a plow or a wash tub. I mean, I'm sitting here just trying to think of, if you made syrup. I mean, if you gardened, they had any kind of seeds you could imagine, and you bought it by the scoop. You had a little scoop, big scoop, you know, medium scoops, and things like corn you bought by the pound, and peas and stuff like that you would buy by the pound. And then our town had we were the pickle capital of the world at that time, and people everywhere brought their pickles here. And when I was a teenager, a young guy, I got contracts with them, and I would plant my own fields of cucumbers, and I would raise cucumbers and take them there instead of being out playing with all the other kids like most kids do when they're in their 10, 11, 12, you know, up to 15 years old, I was in the field, my own field. I was picking cucumbers and taking them up there and selling them. My parents would, in the evening, would load up all the cucumbers that I picked, and we would take them up there, and then I would get paid. And I would come home and I would tend my field for the next day. I mean, because I picked them every day. The field was large enough that I could pick one section a day, and I kept my cucumbers rotating out. I mean, I never missed a day picking except Sunday. My dad would not let me pick on Sunday. So, I mean, there's things, guys, that the simple way of doing things is it's just not here anymore. And I think lots of us don't realize the stress that we're under with living the life that we live now. Most people have huge house notes. They have huge automobile notes. They have insurance out the wazoo. And yet on top of that, they try to find time for family and for relaxation. And in most people's way of looking at things, because of the way people live now, like ants in an ant bed, you know, and all this subdivisions and all this kind of stuff in cities and stuff like that, in order for them to find any relaxation, they have to go to a park or a reservoir or something like that. And if you do that, then most people have to own toys. They got to have boats and ski-doos and you know, all the kinds of things, four-wheelers, and you know, they just people, in order to have some form of recreation, they have to spend more money to have those things, which means they have to work more to be able to accomplish those goals. And then rather than being relaxed, it turns into more of a, I don't know, more of a stress than anything else, because you know, the kids are involved in this, they're involved in that, and everybody feels like they have to do this or they have to do that. You know, I'll be honest with you, if I'd looked at my parents and told them, well, I want to go do this, or I want to go do that, I want to be in sports or anything like that, it would have probably been a no, because my mama would have said, we just don't have the money, son, to take you back and forth to town and go pick you up. There's too much work to be done around the place here. The gardens have to be picked, and you know, because my mom and them, look, we had a garden year round just about of some kind, and you had to work. I mean, if we wasn't working in the garden, you was splitting firewood, and you was mowing the yard, and then when hunting season come around, my daddy would take me squirrel hunting and stuff like that. And if you was, I mean, that was our recreation. When we got through working in the gardens, we could go to the creek, or we could spend some time with a friend or something like that if we got the work done. But nowadays, everybody hires somebody to mow their yard. They don't really tend their yard anymore. And they don't have any animals. They don't have, you know, they don't have a farm. They just have a little 150 by 150 lot. And to be honest with you, most people get bored, and they have to go shopping, or they have to go to sporting goods stores, or they have to go to a lake, or they have to, they feel like they have to take a vacation. I've took vacations in the past. I fell prey to that, and I don't regret it, really. But the one thing I noticed, I took vacations, I've been all over the country, and once you've seen it, you've seen it. And to me, there's no need to go back, because I've seen it. And once I've seen the things that impressed me, then I create them here. And Wanda and I do what we call a staycation now, because we've tried to build our place to the point where we love being home. We don't want to be nowhere else. And when we have to go somewhere else, it's really bothersome, because, like, I've got to go to the doctor, to the hospital tomorrow, which would be a Monday, to do a stress test and go all this kind of stuff, and I got to be there at real early hours of the morning and stuff like that, and that really puts a stress on us to know we've got to be up at a particular time, we got to be on the road at a particular time, we got to go into the big city, we got to fight all the traffic, and then we got to go to a place we ain't never been before, and we got to try to figure out where we're going to be and be there by a specific time, and then be run through the ringer when you get there. And that puts stress on a person. And that's why in the live stream, you know, I told everybody, I says, guys, we've got to get back. We just have to get back to simplicity again. I think that's what the Lord really desired all along, is for us just to live a simple life. You know, I mean, many times in Scripture, he says, be still. Just be still. Which is something that most of us can't do. And I'm talking to myself now. You know, when I'm outside, I'm wide open. And at 60-something years old, in my mid-60s, I'm wide open. And I find myself occasionally sitting down in the shade and just sitting there looking around. And I'm like, you know, at some point I need to slow down. But it's been inbred in me ever since I was a child to just go, 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 go. And when I sit down, I have the same issues my father had. My father, when he would relax, his heart would go out of rhythm. And he ended up having to have a pacemaker put in. And that same thing is beginning to happen to me. That when I sit down and I try to relax, my heart messes up. But as long as I'm up going, my heart usually Cadillacs right along with no problem whatsoever. But when I stop and sit down, then it messes up. And that's one reason I'm wide open all the time. I just don't want to have to deal with my heart messing up. And I think a lot of that has to just do with types of stress that we don't even realize that we're involved in. I know I loved to go deer hunting because I could get up and be out in the woods before daylight in the morning, sitting in my stand or my tree houses and my shooting houses, whatever you want to call them, sitting there just watching all the wildlife go by. 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't even shoot nothing. I just get so caught up in watching them. And then that joy, you know, just overtakes me sometimes. I mean, now I can go sit down in a shoot house now, and I'm sitting there and I start thinking about 1,000 things I got to do. And it robs me of my joy. And I'm so afraid that with all of us, that's what happens. We are so busy. Now, I have a reason to be busy right now because I'm trying to transfer from Deepsouth to Pecan Grove, and I've got a lot of infrastructure that has to be built because the place is just very little here. We had to start from scratch just about. And at 60-something years old, that's kind of tough. And, you know, when you're downsizing and stuff like that, and you're trying to rebuild stuff and not go in debt. You know, I'm staying out of debt. That's what I'm doing. That's the reason it's taking so long. I mean, yeah, if I want to go in debt, I could hire it every bit done and probably be done in less than a year. But I don't want to be in debt because of what I know is going to happen. And at the same time, I'm trying to get Deepsouth ready to be able to put on the market, to be able to sell to someone who hopefully will appreciate it. And, you know, I don't want to leave or give somebody something that, or somebody purchase something that's not in tip-top shape, so I've got to work there. I've got to work here also. And I got to balance that schedule out. And, you know, the dream or the journey is to live a simpler life. And we always have to go through these periods of time where we have a certain length of time. We just got to bust our tail to make it happen so that when we're older, we can live a simpler life. I mean, we're at Pecan Grove here, we're about, I'm going to say we're right at 80% there with everything here. And 20% is probably going to take me another year and a half to complete, because I don't want to go in debt to do it. And I'm trying to be very, very patient as I work my way through it. I'm not stressing myself out. I'll get up in the mornings and I'll say, okay, the dream here is to live a simpler life. What do we need to do today? What is the most important thing to do today? Because I'm not punching a time clock. That's one thing I refuse to do from the time I was a young man till now. Is I tried that for about a year, and I realized punching a time clock is not for me. I can't do it. It just is not in my makeup. That's the reason I owned my own businesses, is because I refuse to punch a time clock. When I get up in the morning, I want to do what I want to do. I believe that's the way God intended for us to live. And here at Pecan Grove, when we get up and we come to Pecan Grove, lots of times we get here, we go, okay, what is the most important thing today that needs to be accomplished? And sometimes it's planting something in the garden. Sometimes it's working in the high tunnel. Sometimes it's working in the shop. Sometimes it's working on other infrastructure projects, because we're coming into the fall season, and we get to the fall season, all of our corn is gathered and in now. I do have to get it all off the cobs and get it put in through the grist mill and get it all ground. And we've been taking it off the cobs and putting it into burlap bags, putting it in the freezer for 2 weeks at a time. I've been doing that in intervals since midsummer, since we harvested. And I still got a long way to go. We're going to end up grinding cornmeal in 2 different stages this year, because I have more than what I anticipated. So we have the cornmeal we've got to do. We've got syrup and things like this. See, the syrup, that won't wait. When it's time to do it, it's time to do it. You got to be ready to do it. So I'm having to get the mill done in order, and get a roof over our heads over here at Pecan Grove in order to be able to, and a furnace built in order to be able to cook the cane syrup. I mean, if it comes down to it, I'll have to do it the way I've always done it, and I won't even be able to use my new stuff that I've got, and that'll break my heart, because I really would like to be able to get it done. So we try to weigh out what we need to do in order to do it, and not create stress on ourselves. I mean, that's the goal, is when you live a life that's called a sustainable life, there are certain things that have to work on schedules. That's the reason for the old people. They knew that this month the corn was going to come in. They knew this month the pears were going to be ready. They knew at this date the pecans were going to be ready to harvest. They knew the grapes were going to be coming in. The fruits were going to be coming in. They knew that gardening was going to be coming in at certain times. They knew that the hog killings was going to be at certain times, and they knew that curing and smoking the meats was going to have to be at certain times. These are all things that keep us sustainable. Now, you know, I mean, if you want to go to the cancer center to buy your food, that's fine. We have done it most of our lives because we've been pre-programmed to do it. And it is a fact that the food we call the grocery store now the cancer center, because if you eat from a grocery store, you'll end up with cancer. And not to say that you won't get it from something else, but I mean, that is the main reason right now most people are ending up in the cancer centers, is because of the foods that we're eating. And when we try to go against that and raise all of our own stuff, it's not very popular to start with, and then secondly, it's not cheap either. The system has it set up where it's actually really expensive. I mean, when you go to town and one tomato plant in a little peat pot this big costs you $5. That's absurd. That is really absurd. And then you order seeds, and you get a pack in, and they're like $4 for a pack. And you open it up, and there's like 10 seeds in it. You know, and you're like, what? I mean, that's why it is so important to learn how to save seeds, to learn how to be productive, raising what you need on your place, you know, and the thing I guess that bothers me the most is I see so many people out there that's my age, and I know several around Pecan Grove that live around us right here now, that are at the age now and they look back and they go, man, I messed up my whole life. I fell prey to the system. And now that they're in their 70s and 80s, a lot of them, they can't do any better for themselves. They're stuck in the system. And there's nothing they can do about it. And they know that. And that's where people like me, and possibly some of you, come in, is that when I have an excess of something, I'll go visit. There's some widows and widowers and stuff like that live around us. Some single elderly people and stuff like that. I'll go to them and I'll say, look, do you happen to eat this here? Because if you do, I have some that I can give to you. I've raised it, and I'll be more than happy to share some of it with you, because we'll have put up everything that we need to put up to make it through a year or 2 years for us. And to see the look on their face like, well, how much is it going to cost me? And it doesn't cost you anything. I'm going to give it to you. They don't know how. They don't know how to take that. There was a lady not far from us here at Pecan Grove. I noticed that her house, she had a really nice home, but I noticed it was only mowed just right around the house. And everything beyond that was growed up overhead high. And it used to stay mowed all the time, all of it. And I went to her and I asked her, I said, ma'am, I said, would it bother you if I cut all this other for you out here? And she said, well, I only have enough money to pay the boy to mow right here around the house. The rest of it's just got out of control, and I don't have any money to pay you. I said, you won't owe me anything. And it was in the hottest part of the summer. She said, but it's so hot. I told her, I said, ma'am, I have a tractor that has a cab on, it's air conditioned. I said, I can bring my tractor over here with the brush hog, and the stuff as tall as a tractor is. I said, I can go through here and I can cut all this stuff down for you if you want me to, and I won't charge you a dime. It leaves them speechless, because I'm gonna have to sit inside during the extreme heat of the day anyway. So why not go out and bless someone? And it brings joy to them. And to me, that's living a simpler life, when you can stop and take time out of your day and you can go to someone and you can say, can I do this for you? I won't charge you anything. And be a blessing to someone. That's what living a simpler life is really all about. I bush hogged her whole entire property for her. And when I got back to the house, she was already talking to my wife on the phone, thanking us for having come over and cleared. There had big limbs that fell out of trees, and trees had broke off from storms and stuff like that. I took the grapple, cleaned all that stuff up, put it in a big old trash pile down in the woods from her property, and then mowed all of it with my brush hog and everything, cut it all down, because mine will cut like a lawnmower when, to the ground. And when I finished, it looked like somebody had run a lawnmower over all of it, and because, and cut it down, looked really, really nice. And she was thanking Wanda for us having come and done that for her. And that brings joy to a person's heart, when you can take time out of your day because you're trying to live a more simple life, and you can go and you can be a blessing to others, because that's what's lacking in this country, is our relationship with one another and trying to live, a more simple life. When we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of the world, and we get caught up in the system that our government has set up for us to live in, then stress levels become really, really high, our bodies become extremely acidic from all the chaos that we live under, and then on top of that we go to the cancer center to buy our food, which is already poisonous to start with, and we add that into an acidic body. We have there's nothing but trouble left for us, and our health breaks down, and that's not the way the Lord intended for us to live our lives. And it bothers me that we all fall prey to that. I mean, I have documents sitting on a table right over here across from me that explains every bit of that system that was set up back in the 20s and 30s in this country and into the 40s, so that we would fall prey to this type of system. And I'm no exception. I fell prey to it 90% of my life. And I have to really, really, really work hard now not to fall prey to it. And I really believe that's when the scripture talks about, come out from among her, my people, and be ye separate. In other words, come out of this system. Get out of it as much as we can. Now, there's no way to be 100% out of it, because we're in the world. The Lord says we're to be in the world, but we're not to be of the world. To be friends with the world is to be enemies with God, the scripture says. So we're to live in this world, and we're to function in this world, but we're to make the Lord our main priority. And by doing that, it's just like I mentioned in the live stream Saturday night. Jeremiah 6:16 tells us to return back to those old paths, wherein is the good ways. He was talking to the nation of Israel at that time. And of course we know the nation of Israel did not do it, and they went back into captivity. And because we're not willing to do it here in our country, and we're willing to stand up and shake our fist in God's face and say, no, we want this, we want that, and we're going to go into captivity. I mean, God, one thing you can understand, God is not mocked. You will not mock God. God will have his way, regardless of what you or me or anybody else wants to think or believe or anything else. He's going to have his way. He has a time schedule. Man is not going to change that time schedule. God has a plan and a program, and it's going to be executed exactly as he sees fit. And all I want to do for my personal life, and this is one challenge that I put out there to all of you, is that at the end of my journey here, I only want to hear one thing from my Father. Just one thing. That's all I want to hear from my Father. I want to hear him say, well done, my good and faithful servant. That is the one thing that I desire more than anything else, is to know that I have done his will and that I have been the best at it that I could be under the circumstances that I'm living in. And today, guys, I'm hoping that maybe in some way, wherever you live, it was, lots of people say, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. Wanda and I, we were sitting over at Deepsouth Homestead in what most people would call heaven, because it's completely sustainable. And Wanda and I looked at one another in our mid-60s, and we said, you know what? We want to start over. Now, to a lot of people, that would be total ludicrous when you have everything at your fingertips right there where you're at. It's completely sustainable there. And we prayed about it and prayed about it. And many times we said, look, we're too old. It's just, we just don't have the finances. It's just, Lord, only way we'll do this, Lord, is if we know it's your will. You're going to have to make the finances available. You're going to have to give us the want to, and then you've got to give us the health to accomplish it. And you know what? Once we quit trying to do it ourselves, because several years we thought about moving from Deepsouth Homestead we knew when we got married it would not be our permanent dwelling place, but we tried to make it our permanent dwelling place because we just wasn't 100% sure at that time. We said, we're just going to continue We're going to continue doing what God wants us to do, the way He wants us to do it. And we're going to utilize this piece of property to the maximum. And if God tells us we got to leave, we'll leave. We're not sentimental about things. And you know what, guys? When we proved ourselves to be good stewards of what He had blessed us with there at Deepsouth Homestead, it wasn't until that point that He opened the door for us to be able to purchase Pecan Grove. And once we purchased it, He has opened one door right after another door for us to be able to do things which we thought was never ever possible at our age to even do. Even if we don't go any further than what we are now, we are completely happy with where we are. And that is perfectly fine with me. And you know, it wasn't until we took that first step to live a more simple life that the Lord kicked in. Because we tried doing it on our own up until that point. I mean, we were looking at land, like we've told y'all before, we looked at land in Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, North Mississippi. I mean, we were looking at land everywhere, trying to find the will of God. And it just wasn't time. It wasn't until we quit trying to do it ourselves and said, Lord, what do you want for us? And when God opened the door, it is exactly what Wanda and me both had been dreaming of. And He made it available to us. And guys, that's how the Lord works. That is the goodness of God. And I just don't know how else to say it other than just to say, look, try to get out of this rat race that we're living in, because it's fixing to get really, really bad. And if you're not out of it as much as you can be, then you're going to go down with it. And I don't like seeing people going down with the system, because it's fixing to get really, really bad. And you know, we know in scriptures it tells us in the latter days and age you won't be able to buy, sell, or anything like that without the mark. And you know that when you got the mark, you already know your destination's already predetermined. So you're going to have to be able to say no to the system and then be able to survive. Because more than likely, when you say no to the system, your protection from the law will be cut off. You won't be able to go to the hospitals. You won't be able to have medication. I mean, you won't have power. You won't have. I mean, they'll cut you off from everything. No bank accounts, no money, no job. You'll have to be able to make it on your own. And that's why I'm trying to tell people now, go back to living a more simple way of life so that you can become more self-sufficient. And if God's will for you to make it, then you'll make it. If not, then if you belong to Him, then your next destination is glory. So that's where I'm at today, guys. And that's the message that I wanted to get across today, was for us to get our eyes off the world and get them back on God. Thank you, guys, from Deepsouth Homestead.